in just 94 seconds, $8.7 million in offshore payments. Senator Chris Van Hollen didn't grandstand with speeches. He pulled out a single banking receipt. Cameras instantly zoomed closer. The Senate chamber fell dead silent. What did Van Hollen reveal that made both Pam Bondi and Kash Patel panic live on national television? At exactly 9:47 a.m. on March 15, 2025, Senator Chris Van Hollen walked into the packed Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room carrying a weathered briefcase that would detonate the biggest financial scandal in FBI history. His calm demeanor masked the explosive evidence about to reshape American politics forever. Across the mahogany table, FBI Director Kash Patel sat rigid in his Navy suit, stacks of prepared talking points arranged before him like armor. To his left, Attorney General Pam Bondi adjusted her red blazer, confidence radiating from every calculated gesture. Both believed they were attending a routine oversight hearing. Neither suspected Van Hollen had spent weeks unraveling their financial conspiracy. Director Patel, Van Hollen began, his Maryland accent cutting through the morning tension. You've testified under oath that the FBI's budget allocation was transparent and lawful. Is that correct? Patel's response came swift and practiced. Absolutely, Senator. Every dollar accounted for, every transfer documented through proper channels. His hands remained steady on the desk, but perspiration began forming at his temples. The chamber buzzed with routine congressional theater until Van Hollen reached into his briefcase with deliberate precision. Then explain this banking receipt. Van Hollen's voice dropped to barely above a whisper as he paced a single document under the camera. The paper showed a wire transfer for exactly $8.7 million, dated February 3, 2025, from FBI operational funds to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Account holder, Bondi Patel Strategic Consulting, LLC. Patel's jaw visibly clenched. Bondi's face drained of all color. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the shock spreading across her features like a virus. 47 seconds of absolute silence followed. Even the court reporters stopped typing. C-SPAN cameras captured every micro expression as both Patel and Bondi processed what just happened. The weight of exposure hit them simultaneously. Twitter exploded with screenshots of the receipt. Bondi Patel's scandal began trending within minutes. That document appears fabricated, Patel stammered, his usual prosecutorial confidence evaporating like morning mist. I've never seen any transfer of that magnitude. But Van Hollen was already pulling out a second document, then a third. Bank statements spanning 6 months. Email chains between Bondi and Patel discussing operational restructuring and strategic partnerships. Bondi's carefully constructed composure began cracking like ice under pressure. Her hands started trembling as she shuffled through her briefing papers, desperately searching for damage control, talking points that didn't exist for this level of exposure. This is a political hit job, she declared, but her voice wavered like a broken radio signal. Senator Van Hollen is weaponizing fabricated documents to undermine law enforcement. The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Sweat beads formed on her forehead despite the committee room's Arctic air conditioning. Fabricated? Van Hollen raised an eyebrow with surgical precision. These documents came directly from Citibank's compliance department. Subpoenaed this morning at 6 a.m. He placed a fourth document on the table. The official subpoena response from Citibank, complete with authentication seals and compliance officer signatures. The bank had provided everything willingly, eager to distance themselves from what appeared to be money laundering through federal law fortune accounts. Corporate America's survival instinct kicked in fast when criminal liability emerged. The chamber erupted like a volcanic explosion. Republican senators demanded explanations. Democratic senators called for immediate investigations. Reporters frantically typed on phones, filing breaking news alerts. Capitol Police stepped closer to the witness table as tensions escalated beyond normal congressional boundaries. Fox News cut their regular programming. CNN broke into their morning show with breaking FBI director and AG caught in 8.7 megagig scandal. MSNBC anchors struggled to process the magnitude of corruption unfolding live. Social media platforms crashed under the weight of viral content sharing. Patel's prepared responses became increasingly incoherent. His legal training, once his greatest asset, now abandoned him completely under the weight of documented evidence. I need to consult with counsel before his voice trailed off entirely as the scope of exposure became undeniable. Director Patel, Van Hollen continued methodically. This receipt shows the transfer originated from FBI Acon 847 Delta Charlie. Your signature authorized the movement of funds. Would you like to explain why you moved $8.7 million in taxpayer money to a private consulting firm owned by you and the Attorney General? Bondi couldn't maintain the facade any longer. Tears began streaming down her cheeks as the full scope of their exposure became undeniable. The carefully applied makeup ran in dark streams down her face, creating a visual metaphor for her crumbling career. We believed the consulting work was legitimate, she whispered into her microphone, her voice barely audible above the chamber's chaos. The FBI needed private sector expertise for cybersecurity initiatives. We were going to disclose everything. Her legal advisors frantically passed notes, urging silence, but the emotional dam had burst completely. Van Hollen's final document landed like a precision strike, recorded phone conversations between Bondi and Patel discussing how to hide the payments from congressional oversight. The transcripts, obtained through NSA intercepts, originally authorized for national security purposes, revealed the entire conspiracy in their own words. At exactly 11:43 p.m. on February 3, 2025, Van Hollen read from the transcript. Director Patel told Attorney General Bondi, quote, "The beauty of the FBI budget is nobody questions operational security expenditures. We move the money tonight, set up the consulting agreement retroactively, and by the time anyone notices, we'll have justified the expense as counterterrorism consulting." Patel's hands were shaking visibly now. Bondi had stopped trying to maintain composure entirely. The evidence was too clear, too documented, too devastating to survive. Both officials' careers had effectively ended within 94 seconds of Van Hollen revealing that receipt. The media reaction was instantaneous and devastating. Fox News anchors Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity, who had defended Patel for months, fell silent during commercial breaks. Their producers frantically rewrote talking points that no longer applied to this new reality. CNN's Anderson Cooper interrupted regular programming with breaking analysis from legal experts who called the evidence absolutely damning and career-ending beyond recovery. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow dedicated an entire emergency segment to connecting the dots between the offshore payments and previous FBI budget discrepancies that suddenly made perfect sense. Social media platforms experienced unprecedented traffic as Bondi Patelgate dominated trending topics across Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Young Americans who typically ignored politics began sharing clips of Bondi crying and Patel's visible panic. Behind the scenes, White House Chief of Staff scrambled to distance President Trump from the scandal. Emergency meetings convened in the West Wing as political advisors calculated the damage to the administration's law and order messaging. Republican senators who had praised Patel's nomination now faced impossible questions from constituents demanding explanation. Senator Ted Cruz, typically Trump's most loyal defender, told reporters outside the Capitol If these allegations prove true, and the evidence appears overwhelming, both officials must resign immediately. The American people deserve law enforcement leaders who uphold the highest ethical standards. Even Cruz's calculated political survival instincts couldn't defend the indefensible. Democratic Party leadership sensed blood in the water. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced immediate subpoena preparation for all FBI financial herkers dating back to Patel's confirmation. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called for emergency hearings and criminal referrals to the Department of Justice's Inspector General. The implications extended far beyond 2 careers. Every FBI operation under Patel's leadership would now face scrutiny. Defense detentors across America began filing appeals, claiming their clients were prosecuted by a compromised bureau. Federal judges privately discussed the constitutional crisis brewing within law enforcement's highest ranks. International allies questioned America's moral authority in global anti-corruption efforts. How could the United States lecture other nations about financial transparency when its own FBI director had allegedly laundered millions through offshore accounts? China's state media gleefully highlighted American hypocrisy in propaganda broadcasts. Van Hollen, meanwhile, maintained his characteristic calm as chaos erupted around him. During a brief recess, he told reporters, "This is exactly why congressional oversight exists. When federal officials believe they're above accountability, citizens suffer. Today, accountability won." His weathered briefcase contained additional documents he hadn't yet revealed, suggesting deeper corruption yet to surface. Inside the committee room, Bondi's legal team huddled desperately around their client. Senior attorney Marcus Webb whiffed urgent strategies, while junior associates frantically searched legal databases for precedents that might offer escape routes. None existed for this level of documented financial malfeasance. Patel sat alone, his FBI security detail maintaining professional distance despite their personal loyalty. Career agents who had served under multiple directors watched their current leader's reputation disintegrate in real time. Some whispered among themselves about damage control measures and succession planning that suddenly became urgent priorities. The committee's ranking Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham, approached Van Hollen during the recess with visible discomfort. "Chris, I need to know, how much more evidence do you have?" Graham's question reflected the GOP's growing panic about defending the indefensible. Van Hollen's slight smile suggested the Maryland Democrat held additional bombshells that could detonate at any moment. Legal experts predicted criminal charges within weeks. Former federal prosecutors on cable news unanimously agreed that money laundering charges were irritable if the evidence held up under investigation. The Southern District of New York, known for aggressive white-collar prosecutions, would likely handle the case given its complexity and political sensitivity. Former Attorney General William Barr, appearing on Fox News via satellite, delivered perhaps the most damaging assessment. "I've reviewed the banking documents shown today, and they appear authentic and devastating. No law enforcement official can survive this level of financial impropriety. Both individuals should resign before sunset." Even Trump loyalists couldn't defend the evidence Van Hollen had methodically presented. Justice Department insiders leaked to Washington Post reporters that emergency meetings were already underway to discuss special prosecutor appointments. Career prosecutors who had worked with both Patel and Bondi expressed shock at the allegations, with several requesting immediate transfers to avoid association with the scandal. Federal judges across the country began receiving motions from defense attorneys challenging every case prosecuted during Patel's tenure. The legal system faced potential paralysis, as thousands of convictions could theoretically be appealed based on prosecutorial corruption claims. Chief Justice Roberts privately worried about constitutional crisis implications that extended far beyond 2 individuals. Stock markets reacted nervously to the political instability. Financial institutions, with FBI contracts, saw share prices plummet as investors anticipated contract cancellations and compliance investigations. The dollar weakened against major currencies as foreign markets processed America's domestic turmoil. Street protests began forming outside FBI headquarters in Washington, but also in major cities across America. Citizens demanded accountability from institutions they had trusted to uphold justice. Signs reading "Clean House FBI" and "Arrest the Criminals" appeared at demonstrations in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Atlanta. The scandal had legs, momentum, and most dangerously for the conspirators, it had documentation that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Within 94 seconds of Van Hollen revealing that receipt, the careers of two of America's most powerful law enforcement officials had effectively ended. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a badge or a subpoena, it's truth, archived and revealed at the right second. What happens when leaders who built power on secrecy are undone by a simple banking receipt? If law enforcement can't survive financial transparency, was their authority ever legitimate? The answers to these questions would reshape American politics for years to come, all because one senator decided to follow the money trail exactly where it led.